All right. Let's see. Let's get this over here. I don't know if I love that. Hold on. Let's try and fix this. All right. Yeah, that's good. All right. Let's get this in the league chat. All right. Let's see. Where's my phone? Let's give it like 2 seconds. Give it like 2 more seconds. First of all, how does that pop up? How's that look in the league chat? Do we get the thumbnail in there when I send it like that? Hold on. So what's the difference if I do? Does that change anything? There we go. Okay. Noted. All right. Give it like 1 more second. Okay, I got the YouTube stream up. All right, folks, we are back. This is my first episode, right? First live show from the new apartment, new studio. Still figuring some things out, still getting some decorations up. So, pardon the blank wall behind me. But we are here. This is a post-draft episode. I'm going to react a little bit to the draft. I got some notes, some things that I want to talk about with the NFL draft. And then I'm going to move into my fifth and potentially final mock draft for the Friends Who Gamble rookie draft, which we are now, as I say this, 9 days, 21 hours, 26 minutes, and 28 seconds away from the start of our fifth annual rookie draft, I believe. So before we get into all that, of course, we're going to start with a word from our sponsor, starting with Easy Peasy Moving and Service. Brains, brawn, and true professionalism. That's Easy Peasy Moving and Service. Muscle for hire, moving assembly, errands, you name it, they will do it. Easy Peasy is a multi-service team. If you need something, just ask. Sundog Multimedia. Sundog is an online communication and social media company. What started as a personal tool has since evolved into something much bigger, allowing users to communicate, research, and discover things that impact their lives and daily decisions. Sundog will collaborate with you to build and execute a modern yet nimble social media strategy by utilizing innovative and traditional media principles. Sundog is also a proud supporter of the Stop Soldier Suicide Foundation. You can follow them on Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. That's Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. All right. Before I move into the mock draft, I do want to talk a little bit about the NFL draft. I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think this was kind of a weird class to try and predict, right? Of course, you had the big running back class, which I'm still big on, but I feel like maybe the back half of that class maybe ended up, I was a little surprised by the day 3 picks when we're talking about that. I expected a lot more running backs to go in day 2. They ended up going in day 3, and they didn't really go to the greatest landing spots, just in terms of opportunity. Of course, with running backs, any running back that makes a roster is kind of worth rostering if you can in fantasy football, because you really never know. I mean, that's a very volatile position in terms of health. All it takes is one injury, and all of a sudden, the second or third string running back could be thrust into a starting role. So, I don't like to rule running backs out just because they might be second or third on the depth chart. But there were guys that I was kind of hoping or expecting to maybe get into more advantageous situations off the bat, and they didn't quite end up in those spots. I do think part of it might have just been because of the depth of the running back class. I think that a lot of people might have said, well, I mean, I don't need to spend such a high pick on a running back here because I can kind of just fall back and wait until day 3 to grab those guys. So we'll see. I think I'll get into some of those as we move on, but especially with it being a 2-round mock draft, I think it did kind of push a few guys out of that conversation a little bit. But, on top of that, there was the wide receiver class, which I almost kind of feel like sort of the same way. I wasn't as high on the wide receiver class as a whole, but I think there were a lot of guys that fell to day 3 where all of a sudden I was maybe interested in them more so a week ago than I am now, because now I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, I don't really care about uh, Horton or Jimmy Horn or any guys like that, where they might end up in a spot, and I'm just looking at it and it's like, you know what, maybe I was getting maybe too excited about the rookie draft and too excited about some of these rookies, and realistically, I'm not as into them as I might have been a week ago. And then of course there is the quarterback class, and there are some things I want to talk about in a second with that. But it just seems like we're maybe moving into a new meta when it comes to drafting quarterbacks in the NFL. So I'll get to that in a second. And starting with the quarterback, so I will say I want to address two things when it comes to GMs. Um, the Brendan Shane, his son, is not a genius. Like, what are we talking about? Okay, everybody's going crazy about him because on Hard Knocks last year, on the offseason, the front office version of Hard Knocks, when he was in his dad's office, he was saying that his dad should draft Jaden Daniels. And people were talking like he's a genius for suggesting that. Jaden Daniels was the reigning Heisman champion. He came off of arguably one of the greatest college seasons of all time. And we want to give this kid credit for saying that his dad should pick the kid at 6. I mean, Daniels was basically, I'd say at that point, he was the consensus QB2 in that class. Personally, like looking back, I think I might have ranked Caleb Williams higher when I was factoring in fantasy football. And that was because he was such a lock to go to the Bears at 1. And I just felt like the opportunities would be endless for him there. So I think I gave him the slight edge. But just like in a vacuum, when we're talking players, I mean, Gene Daniels had a very strong argument for the best player in that class, at least when we're talking about the quarterback. So this idea that he's some genius for saying that his dad should take a guy in Jaden Daniels, who they never had an opportunity to get. The Giants were picking 6th overall. Caleb Williams was a lock to go 1. We always knew that. And then Jaden Daniels was a lock to go 2 for most of this time. I think there was maybe a slight chance that they might have gone Drake May. But it was always going to be Jaden Daniels and then Drake May, or vice versa. So, especially when it's going to the Washington Commanders, which is a division rival of the Giants never had any shot at getting Jaden Daniels. So people were like, oh, he should have listened to his kid. He should have drafted him. When would he have drafted him? How would he have drafted him? That's what I don't understand. And then now everybody's circling back on this kid because he posted Jackson Dart highlights on his Instagram like the day before the draft. First of all, the kid is like 15. Why does anybody know what this kid is posting on Instagram? I have my own questions about that. But also, we don't know if Jackson Dart is going to be any good. I mean, he was the 26th pick, I believe, in the first round. I mean, there's plenty of data out there that shows that quarterbacks basically need to be drafted in like the top 10 if they want to have any hope as a first-round quarterback. So the deck's already stacked against Jackson Dart a little bit. I'm going to get into Jackson Dart as a quarterback soon. I think I'm going to save that for when I actually do the mock. But, I mean, we haven't seen the kid play. So now all of a sudden everybody's saying so-and-so Shane, Brendan Shane's son, should be a GM. They should hire him. Why? He obviously knew that the Giants were in play for Jackson Dart. He was getting excited and he just posted highlights. If anything, maybe he was trying to be dramatic and drum up some drama and get his name in the news by posting that because he knew that people would see it and freak out. Do we not think that he just heard from his dad, hey, we're probably going to get this kid. We're going to be looking to trade up. We're going to be looking to get aggressive with our second rounder to move up and get Jackson Dart. So get excited because that's going to be our new franchise quarterback. He's probably going to save your dad's job. I mean, what are we talking about? This has nothing to do with him evaluating Jackson Dart as a talent. So this idea that Brendan Shane's son is like some genius and some future GM outside of the fact that he's just going to be like a Nepo baby in the industry, it's ridiculous. Come on, we got to relax. We got to settle down. Talking about genius GMs, James Gladstone, I mean, I respect the move of just stepping in as like this new boy wonder GM. He's like 30 something years old. He takes over in Jacksonville, makes a big splash by trading up for Travis Hunter. I mean, it's not like he found some diamond in the rough in Travis Hunter. He found a once in a lifetime player, a guy that just won the Heisman Trophy, a guy whose jersey number is already retired at Colorado, which obviously means a ton. But it's Travis Hunter. Like, what are we talking about? And it's not like he really robbed the Browns blind. I mean, if they go on to, waste those picks, then I guess we can look back on it and say, yeah, holy shit, like, look at how this panned out. But, I mean, he made an offer that they couldn't refuse. It's not like he just like gave them 2 second rounders and all of a sudden moved up. Like he traded first rounders, gave them another second rounder. He gave them like third rounders on top of that. He just made him offer. I've been comparing it to, there was a story, I believe it was in The Last Dance, when they're talking about Michael Jordan playing poker. He was so competitive and he hated losing so much that when he felt like he was losing a hand, he would just up the bet to something that he knew his teammates, because Michael Jordan made so much more. He knew that his teammates would feel uncomfortable trying to, call that bet, that they would just fold even if they had a good hand, because they figured, well, he must have something, or I just don't want to lose it, or maybe I'm bluffing, and he's calling my bluff on that. It's not because, but that doesn't mean that Michael Jordan's a better poker player. It just means that he had more money and more capital, and that he could kind of strong arm these guys into folding. So yeah, the Browns. I mean, first of all, I think any team would have to consider taking the deal that they got, but also the Browns are trying to recover from the Watson trade. So I think recouping some of these picks that they gave up to give to Houston to get Watson, I think it was just the right move for them. And I think that they, obviously they had kind of a bizarre draft class, and I think that there are definitely ways to pick that apart. I think that they kind of have all eyes on 2026. They're going to have 2 first rounders in that draft. I don't know if they're going to have another second rounder in that draft or not, but they have other picks too. So they were able to grab some, I think, high quality players in this draft. I'm not sure what they're doing about the quarterback stuff, but yeah, I mean, what else did James Gladstone do to like make him some genius besides going up there on the podium and talking about like pyramids and UFOs and all types of profound shit like that? I think they were maybe crowning the kid a little too early. So let's settle down with that. And then, speaking of the Browns, speaking of the quarterback stuff, the Shedeur Sanders slide. I mean, personally, everybody saw it. I had him ranked as my, I believe, QB4. Obviously Cam Ward at the top. Then I had another tier with Jalen Milroe and Will Howard. And then I had Shedeur and Jackson Dart kind of in like this weird middle tier. And, to be honest, I mean, if we look at it, I definitely have Shedeur and Dart closer to that tier with like McCord and Riley Leonard and Quinn Ewers and stuff like that. Then I would have him to Cam Ward if I were to put together my big board ranking. So I obviously was not high on Shedeur. I still can't act like I wasn't surprised by just how far that he dropped. But I mean, it seems like we're kind of moving into a new meta in the NFL. And it looks like you're going to be a first round pick, and we're going to use high draft capital on you, or we're just not going to use a valuable pick on you at all. And it seems like a lot of teams are doing that. I mean, even last year we saw it where there were 6 quarterbacks that went in the top 12, I believe, and then I don't think there was another quarterback that went until day 3, and I think that was either the 5th or the 6th round until somebody else was finally taken. So it feels like maybe we're shifting into that, but at the same time, I mean, we got to look at the facts. I think that there were 9 first-round quarterbacks in the last 2 seasons. All 9 of them still have their starting jobs. I think Anthony Richardson is like the one that's kind of on the thinnest ice in terms of that, but he's still the starter in Indianapolis. That's 9 teams right there that don't need a quarterback. And then however many on top of that don't. There aren't many teams right now that need a quarterback. I mean, even the Saints, it's kind of a weird spot for them where I don't think that they're really built to bring in a quarterback right now. And, obviously they use it on Shuck or Shug, however the hell they pronounce it. But, I think that they're a lot of teams are looking towards next year's class. They figure they can load up on other positions in this draft, and then they can kind of position themselves to try and get into the top 10 for one of these high-end quarterback picks that they're expecting next year. But, I mean, there are red flags with Shedeur Sanders, and I think you have to kind of do the blind resume stuff. And I understand, okay, you look at it, he's got a ton of yards, he's got a great completion percentage, but we also have to look at the why, right? I mean, it's a lot of bubble screens, it's a lot of slants, there's a lot of yak that goes into that yardage, and that also inflates the completion percentage. It's not like he was like otherworldly with his completion percentage. And when you watch the tape, he's not accurate. Like, I mean, he has good accuracy, but it's not because of his accuracy that his completion percentage was so high. It's because of the average depth of target. It's because of, throwing to Travis Hunter. But I mean, there are other guys. I mean, he won what? The Otto Graham Award. Is that the best quarterback in the country award? Gardner Minshew did the same thing. He was the best quarterback in the country in college, his final year at Washington State or wherever he was. And then he was like a day 3 pick, and he came in as a backup. He eventually won the starting job, and we see that is what he's become. He's become sort of like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type, where he comes in and you're kind of hoping that he doesn't win the job, but he always seems to kind of win an opportunity at the job. But at the same time, when he does that, the team probably isn't that great. So, I mean, you look at it and it sounds like, he wasn't interviewing well. And I think a lot of people took that as him going into the interviews and saying some inflammatory stuff. And it sounds, there's some reports that have come out where I don't know what's real, what's fake, but it does seem like, and this is coming from McShay, he was going into things and he was kind of getting exposed, especially when he had to do board work. I mean, I think that he just really isn't a football mind like that. He had to go up on the whiteboard. He had to do some stuff. They were doing the install package, and he couldn't really process it like you would like to see from a guy that you might be using a first-round pick on. So, I mean, yeah, like that's a red flag right there. He's only been coached by his dad, right? That's a red flag to me. I mean, you're coming into the NFL. How can he take coaching from other people that aren't his dad? We don't know. We haven't seen that. I mean, I think that, maybe I know Deion coached him a little bit in high school. I don't know all the time, but from the moment that he graduated high school, he's only been coached by his father. And we got to lay to rest this narrative that he has like revived these programs. He went to Jackson State with Deion Sanders. That is the reason that Jackson State became a powerhouse, because of course they became a powerhouse. They brought in all the best recruits that would otherwise never, ever go to these HBCUs. And, he got Travis Hunter, Deion did, to flip from Florida State to Jackson State. And we want to give Shedeur Sanders credit for how that program turned around. No, they came in with a much better roster than what we've ever seen at the HBCU level. Of course they were going to be a powerhouse. Then they transfer, they all go to Colorado. Deion takes all his best players from Jackson State with him to Colorado. And yeah, they went from being like a 1-win team to being like a very solid team. They were like barely ever ranked. They made it to one bowl game, the Alamo Bowl, and they lost. And people want to talk about, oh yeah, he turned 2 programs around. So, okay, they kind of came in and became a force of nature at the HBCU level. And then what did he really do? He went from bad to mid at Colorado. We're going to give him credit for that. I mean, that's just like ridiculous. I think that there are a lot of red flags. Again, I did not expect him to drop all the way to the 5th round, but there were a lot of red flags for Shedeur Sanders that I think were getting covered up by the media and just by the fact that his last name is Sanders. So I think that we got to get over that. Okay. And I think we have to accept that maybe he's just not that great as a prospect. That doesn't mean that he can't be great. That doesn't mean that he can't win the starting job. I think that this is probably the best thing to happen to him facing this type of adversity. But I think that a lot of people were off with their valuation of him as the QB2. Mel Kiper had him as the QB1, I believe. That was just ridiculous. And I'm not even saying that in hindsight because I had him as my QB4. But one more thing with Shedeur, the prank phone call. Okay. I mean, okay. It was Jeff Ulbricht's kid that did it. He went in and fucking found his contact information, and then he called them with his buddies down at Ole Miss. Yeah, okay, the kid is an asshole. You do that. That is a prank that is designed to be an asshole to Shedeur Sanders. We can all accept that, right? What is with the reactions that people are having when they're talking about, oh, this is the worst. What are you talking about? No punishment. This kid's a piece of shit. The kid's an asshole. Okay, lay it to rest. Okay, Tyler Warren got prank called. There was somebody last year, I believe, that got prank called. Cooper DeJean, he got prank called. This shit happens, okay? Like, we have heard stories about this before. Where was any of that outrage? And then the broadcast going on yesterday, oh, I just want to give Shedeur Sanders a hug. Just as a dad, I feel like, shut the fuck up, okay? Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders were like cyberbullying kids last year. Kids that left Colorado, that were run out of Colorado by the Sanders family. They were going at these kids, calling them nobodies. Deion was saying, my son's a top 5 pick. Fuck them, okay? Like, what are we talking about? I just want to give the kid a hug. That was like pathetic. That's like unprofessional. That's embarrassing. That was like a low point for ESPN and NFL Network. That was just fucking pathetic. But a couple more draft thoughts, some winners and some losers. Some winners, first of all, I just want to shout out some of my guys. Brian Robinson, Marvin Mims, Jalen Tolbert, Joe Mixon. I wasn't really too worried about Joe Mixon to begin with. I mean, yes, they brought in Woody Marks. I feel like that's more of a Dameon Pierce thing than it is Joe Mixon. I bet there were rumors floating around that Houston was going to be in on some running backs. So the fact that they used like a day 3 pick and a guy that wasn't kind of in that top tier, that makes me happy as a Mixon owner. Brian Robinson is a huge winner so far. And, knock on wood, he can still go out and sign somebody. But I was really worried that a guy like Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins was going to end up as the next Commanders running back. The fact that they did not use any significant draft capital on a running back right now, that is a huge win for Brian Robinson owners. Marvin Mims, Jalen Tolbert, Jalen Tolbert especially. I liked Tolbert last year. He worked a lot with Dak in the offseason. Dak Prescott had a quote saying, the wide receiver that spends the most time with him in the offseason usually has a breakout year. Tolbert was starting to look really good. I mean, he actually had a handful of great games last year, double-digit games, 9-point games, 8-point games. Serviceable flex position worthy games. I mean, I never had to use him in my flex, but, he was even doing that with Cooper Rush. Getting Dak Prescott back, and the fact that they did not add anybody significant at the wide receiver position, that's huge for a guy like Jalen Tolbert, who I felt like was prepared to finally break out last year. And Marvin Mims, kind of the same thing. He was breaking out at the end of last year, was actually unbelievable for the final month and a half of the season. And the fact that, they did bring in another wide receiver. I feel like that's worse for Devon Vele, if anything. But, of course, the same thing, no significant draft capital put towards the wide receiver position. To me, that's very good for Marvin Mims to build off of that kind of breakout second half, we can call it, that he had. But some other ones, some running backs I want to shout out. Chase Brown. A lot of people worried about the Bengals bringing in another running back. They brought in like nobody. The Cowboys running backs, there were no additions there besides Jaden Blue, who, I think he could be pretty good, but that's a day 3 running back. I think it's kind of a door wide open competition. I'm saying the Cowboys running backs on the roster right now, they were winners in the sense that they still have a chance. They can still go in, prove themselves, and win that job. And then DeAndre Swift. I mean, Ben Johnson ran him out of Detroit. I've been kind of thinking that he was going to do the same here, and of course he is not. I think that they are still going to look to add a running back because it seems like they were in on some running backs and they kind of got beat to it a couple times in the NFL draft. So, I don't think that they're done adding to the running back position. But for now, DeAndre Swift does have an opportunity to stick on as the starting running back in Chicago. So I think that's pretty good for him. So some losers, maybe some controversial ones. I mean, starters, I have, any Packers wide receiver that was already in the roster. The Packers finally used a first-round pick on a wide receiver. They went with Matthew Golden. I would just be a little concerned. I mean, I think that Christian Watson is fucked. I think Dontavian Wicks, it's really do or die now. I mean, he's got to clean up the drop problem, and if he doesn't, then he's out of here. Romeo Doubs, I think he's going to be up for a new contract at the end of this season. Maybe that could signal that they're ready to move on from him. I think Jaden Reed is probably safe just because of what he brings with his versatility. But I think as a wide receiver 1, I do think that Golden's going to come in, and I think it's going to kind of be his job to lose. I mean, it might not look like that on the depth chart when they go into camp, but I feel like he should be going in with that mentality as like the most pure receiver that they have. I do think that is Dobbs, but I think as far as elite upside, Golden's the one that has that. So, wearing 22 as a receiver, it's a little concerning. Should have stuck with 81, I believe he was going to go with. But yeah, I mean, first round capital, they never do that with a receiver. That means something to me. So, if I was any Packers wide receiver, I'd be a little bit nervous about my target share moving forward. Najee Harris, big loser with the addition of Amarian Hampton. Christian Kirk, I forgot that he was on the Texans, but the fact that they brought in both Iowa State wide receivers, that is very concerning, especially one of them is pretty good working out of the slot. Ramondre Stevenson, I think that, that kind of goes without saying with Travion Henderson. Maybe they can work together a little bit. We saw Henderson work with Judkins in the backfield. We know how McDaniels kind of likes to run that stuff. So, I think maybe it could be better for the Pats, but maybe not better for Ramondre Stevenson owners. Because maybe we can get more efficient usage out of Ramondre if he can clean up the fumbles, less carries. It might be better for his health. I feel like he always fades toward the end of the season. So I think from a real life football standpoint, it's probably good for the Pats to have both of them clicking. But I think Ramondre's days is like RB1 for fantasy purposes. I don't know if it's there. I don't know if he's going to be a fantasy starter anymore. Couple losers. I think this is where it could be controversial. I'm going to share my screen really quick. Brian Thomas Jr. his 17-game pace last year. So in the 12 games with Trevor Lawrence, he was on pace for 65 catches, 1,084 yards, 9 touchdowns on 103 targets. Now, don't get me wrong. As a rookie, that is a very good stat line to deliver. But look at the difference with 5 games with Mac Jones. 139 catches, 204 targets, 1,758 yards, and 14 touchdowns. They now add Travis Hunter, where they just gave up a ton. They just gave up a total Godfather offer. Like I said, it was an offer that they could not refuse, the Browns. They bring in Travis Hunter with a second overall pick. He is a very good route runner. Matthew Harmon compares his route tree to Odell Beckham Jr. That is incredible praise. But I mean, I think that there's a chance that that end of the season run that he went on with Mac Jones, where, they kind of had nothing to do. They had nobody else to throw to. They were just trying to fuck shit up. I feel like there's a chance that that 5-game stretch is kind of the peak of Brian Thomas. I think that it might be, tough for him moving forward to kind of separate himself and kind of build on top of that, unless they go insanely pass heavy. But I mean, right now, I feel like Travis Hunter, it sounds like he's going to step in. He's going to be a wide receiver, and he's going to kind of go in for, got to have it third downs on defense, red zone packages, stuff like that. But whenever you're a good wide receiver and then your team brings in another great wide receiver with better draft capital, I mean, we see it all the time, right? T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Elijah Moore was breaking out on the Jets, and then they use a first-round pick on Garrett Antonio and, things like that, where, all of a sudden you got to pay attention to that draft capital. You got to understand that that's the investment that they're making. I'm just not sure what we can expect from Brian Thomas. I mean, he was good. He was a very good rookie. He was a great rookie, but he was just a good player. In that stretch with Trevor Lawrence, we don't even know what to expect from Trevor Lawrence. We haven't seen Liam Cohen as a head coach ever. So I think there were a lot of question marks. I would just be a little nervous about Brian Thomas's value. I mean, I think he could still be great, but I do feel like we're maybe seeing his value peak, and it might be too late as far as trying to hit that peak if you're selling. And then Rashee Rice, I think he's a little bit of a loser coming out of this draft. One, he's like a loser in general, but also, the Chiefs bringing in Jaden Royals. He kind of profiles the same as Rashee Rice. Maybe that signals that they're not sure about his knee and how he's coming back. Maybe that signals they're not sure about a criminal case that's coming up and what his availability will be. But they bring in a guy that profiles to do the exact same stuff as him. I just feel like that's not a great sign considering all the other things that he has going on. So I'd also just be a little bit nervous about a guy like Rashee Rice too. But that's kind of everybody that I could think of off the top of my head when I was putting the list together. I'm sure if I went a little more extensive, I could probably find something a little bit more. But those are just some winners and losers that I have. But now I'm ready to get on to the mock draft. Let me just get this set up real quick. Let me pull up my mock draft notes. Hold on. All right, let me share the screen. All right, I'm going to have a sip of water. Okay. I feel like I've kind of gone with a hybrid approach lately on my mocks where, I'm trying to use some information that I might have. I'm trying to speculate a little bit. I'm putting myself into the shoes of this owner. I'm taking over their body, and I'm doing what I would do if I were them. I'm going back to my roots on this mock draft. I don't care about the information. I'm not sure who I can trust right now anyways, but I've got some thoughts on this draft, and I kind of want to go back to proposing some strategies, especially to McMorrow in particular. So I'm kind of getting some acid reflux I think I'm dealing with here. But all right, first pick. Let's not play games. It's Ashton Jeanty. Okay. What else do I got to say? 6th overall, went to the Raiders. He's going to get unlimited usage. It's like an unbelievable landing spot for him. That's all I got to say. 1-1. Don't even do the thing where you wait to take him until 1-3. Who cares? Whatever. This is where I'm going to get a little creative. I'm going to go back to one of my original strategies here, right? We're going to go Hampton. I think that's who McMorrow has as RB2 anyways. RB2 in the draft. Great landing spot with the Chargers. I think that's fantastic. I really like that. We're going to Hampton at 2. Now, McMorrow, I think he's been leaning going Cam Ward here. I think that there's a little bit of concern about Bowen maybe taking Cam Ward if he's available at 4. I'd say right now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that Bowen has more pressing needs at other positions, right? He's got Lamar Jackson on his team. He loves Bryce Young. He's got Bryce Young. And he's got Geno Smith, who just got a new contract with the Raiders, I think. If not, they're working on it. The Raiders are obviously loading up, and they're trying to compete now. I think that he's in a great situation right there. That's 3 great quarterbacks right there. Personally, I mean, I'm not crazy about Ward. I think he's by far the QB1 in this class. I don't think that he's like some generational prospect or anything. So, on the very, very small off chance that Bowen wants to take Ward there, I say go ahead and do it, because then all of a sudden that pushes, some of these other guys down the board, like Travis Hunter or Tet McMillan. That's who I think would be in play, at that spot. But also you got to look around the league and just wonder how many people really need a quarterback to the point where, if Bowen is trying to trade out of this pick, especially if it's on the clock and he has 10 minutes to do so, how many teams are really making that push to get to the spot? I mean, because McMorrow owns all these picks, it's not like he can just trade back a couple picks. I don't think Wallace at 8 is looking to trade up to 4 to take Cam Ward. So nobody can really use the first-round draft capital in this draft to get into that spot. And then who's giving up what it would take to get the 4th pick to get Ward? I don't think there's any teams that are really that desperate at quarterback, and I don't think there are many teams that love Cam Ward as a quarterback enough to warrant that. So I'm going to roll the dice here. I'm going to try and load up at all the other positions, and I'm going to try and let Cam Ward slide. I'm going back to that strategy. I think that is the play. I mean, like I said, if Bowen wants to do that, I think it's unnecessary for him. But go ahead. I mean, I just think it's the least of his concerns as quarterback. So I'm taking Trevion Henderson here. 3 running backs here. Right. And I'm going to take another running back later on in this first round, because, I mean, the data just does not support Bucky Irving as a long-term option. I understand that Bucky Irving was great. I understand that he's like a fantasy darling. I do think the way that he's being memed as a player right now is a little concerning. It feels like they're setting him up for failure. But, I mean, one, why not just have a whole stable of running backs, right? Right now you have 4 good running backs on your roster between these 3 and Bucky. But, Liam Cohen's gone, right? Rashad White is still there. He's a great pass protector that's going to keep him on the field. They're talking about wanting to get Sean Tucker a little more involved in the run game as well. They just drafted Emeka Egbuka. It looks like they might be going pass heavy. They have 4 really talented pass catchers on that roster. I'm not trusting Bucky Irving. Maybe he can still be great this year, but I'm not trusting him as a long-term option. We've seen Dameon Pierce come in as a day 3 guy, crush it as a rookie, and then totally lose it as a second-year guy. All these undrafted guys that come in, all these day 3 guys that come in, and they're fantastic for a year or 2, and then they lose it. Philip Lindsay, that's another favorite example of mine. I'm just not trusting it. So take those running backs now, get them. I think these are by far the top 3 running backs in this class, both by talent. I had Henderson as my RB2, and then also with landing spot. They're in perfect situations. Take them and take the risk on Cam Ward dropping. Okay. Now we move on to Bowen. This is where it kind of gets interesting, right? Because there's Tet McMillan, who we could pair up with Bryce Young there. I think that Bowen's hoping that Henderson is there. I don't think he loves Judkins. Also, I don't know if Judkins warrants being the 4th overall pick here either. Same with Caleb Johnson, just due to draft capital and everything like that. I think he wants to go wide receiver here. I think that's probably a pretty good pick. I mean, I think it's just a best player available thing. And, if you feel like you get too crowded at wide receiver, you can always figure that out later. But I think getting the best players on your team, you can never go wrong doing that. I think he's going to have a hard time passing on Travis Hunter, and I can't blame him. For all the things I said, that Travis Hunter can come in, take over as the wide receiver 1. I think he's going to be a primary receiver in Jacksonville. I think he's a fantastic receiver. I love him as a wide receiver. That's my wide receiver 1. And also just knowing Bowen, I mean, we're talking about the Zits. They love the superstar power that comes with that. They love having a guy like that. So I think he's going to go Travis Hunter there. But I think it's close between that and Tet McMillan for the reasons that I've already listed. But I think it's going to be Travis Hunter. That works out perfectly for McMorrow because I know McMorrow has Ted McMillan as his wide receiver 1. In this spot, I've already taken three running backs. You got to go the receivers here. Take Ted McMillan, right? I'm going to go Ibuka here. I understand, right? I understand that he's now in a crowded wide receiver room. I mean, I'm not going to worry about Jalen McMillan too much. That was a third-round pick that they had last year. I understand that he was great when Chris Godwin went down. But Ibuka was a first-round pick when they absolutely did not have to do it. That means that they love this player. It might take him a little bit of time. I don't know if this was a signal that Chris Godwin's not going to be ready for the start of the season. That would be crazy if he's not, because they were teasing him maybe coming back for the playoffs last year. Now all of a sudden he's going to be ready for week 1. That would be a bit nuts. But even if you got to wait, right? McMorrow is in a position where he can afford to wait. He doesn't need these guys to be great right away. He still has his first-round pick next year. He's got a million other picks next year on top of it. So you can take a guy that's maybe a little bit more of a wait and see. I love him. I think that McMorrow should be taking this approach with his pre-draft rankings and, maybe just using, landing spot and draft capital as like a tiebreaker to make minor changes to his rankings. But he can afford to wait on some of these guys. So wait on Ibuka. That is the all-time leading receiver at Ohio State. That's wide receiver U, or one of them. I think that's a pick there, right? Just add to it. You got Josh Downs already waiting for you back on the roster too. But I think you just got to, add guys like that. And then at 7 before this break, because I know Wallace is going to be in play for a running back and a wide receiver, you got these two guys. I think Judkins is the pick here. Be a hog. Be greedy. Now you have 5 great running backs on your roster. I understand, okay, Judkins, they also used another pick on Dylan Sampson. I think that they're going to go run heavy. I mean, we saw them make it work with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt under Kevin Stefanski. It sounds like they're going to kind of go back to that scheme. They're going to go back to their basics. They know that that's when they played their best football, is when they went run heavy, and they had a 2 running back system there. So I'm not going to be too concerned about that. Maybe it limits his upside just a tiny bit. But they used a really good pick on him. I think Judkins is unbelievable. I think he got drafted ahead of Travion Henderson. He was the 3rd running back off the board. I'm not going to be scared away from that. But I think, like I said, with all the stats that kind of work against Bucky Irving as far as him being a long-term option, I wouldn't look at that and be like, I got Bucky. My depth is great. I'm all set. Take another running back here. Take best player available. That's what I think Judkins is in this spot. And just have those 5 guys. And if Bucky Irving ends up being a long-term guy and all 4 of these guys hit, then you have 5 great running backs that you can work with. And if you want to either use that as depth options, I mean, you can always put that in a super flex position too. Or if you want to just trade one away, then go ahead and you can do that. But I think this is the best player available spot. That's what I think Judkins is. Now you got 4 running backs in this draft. You got 2 receivers. I think that's a great start for McMorrow. Now I move on to Wallace. He could be looking running back here. I don't think that he will. I think that he's okay with his running backs right now, especially if he's trying to compete. I feel like maybe this could be a wide receiver pick. He's got some question marks at receiver, right? Calvin Ridley, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. How are we feeling about these guys for all different reasons? I think he should go wide receiver here. He doesn't need a guy that needs to be like an immediate contributor. I think Luther Burden is probably a good pick here. Golden should definitely be in play as well. But I mean, first wide receiver that Ben Johnson took. I know that he took Loveland as a pass catcher first. But it looks like Ben Johnson is trying to kind of do what he did when they were in Detroit. And Detroit's had no problem telling guys, get the fuck out, you don't work for us, right? DeAndre Swift was one example. TJ Hawkinson was another. If they don't feel like you fit what they're doing, then they'll just get you the fuck out. I think that DJ Moore is in trouble. Ben Johnson's talked about no block, no rock. That felt like a very pointed comment at DJ Moore. He had some comments about everything being an open competition that also felt like they were being pointed at DJ Moore. I would be surprised if DJ Moore is on a different roster come week 1. We'll see. That could also just come down to how Burden develops. I understand that, he does have some concerns talking about effort, talking about route running and different things like that, pass catching, all, everything that it takes to be a wide receiver. But this is a yak guy. This is a guy that can play inside. He can play outside. Obviously, Ben Johnson really believes in him. a bunch. So, he might not be an immediate contributor due to that, crowded wide receiver room, but I think it's a good long-term play, and it's, something that could pay off sooner rather than later as well. So I think right now I have Wallace going wide receiver here. Now we go on to McMorrow's next 3 picks. That's when you can take Cam Ward. I would go Loveland. I like that situation a little bit more, right? I mean, we're talking about Ben Johnson again. We've seen what he's done with, Sam Laporta. A lot of people talk about Loveland. They say that he's the better pass catcher between him and Warren. He is younger. My whole thing was I was just pushing back on the whole idea because people are trying to discredit the fact that Tyler Warren put up like 1,200 yards as a tight end in the Big Ten, but that's neither here nor there. I really like the Chicago spot. He was the first tight end off the board. I think Loveland is the pick there. We'll see what McMorrow's preference is, but you got to grab a tight end. And then go Golden. I think McMorrow likes Golden. Like I said, first time that the Packers have used a first-round pick on the hell is he? On a wide receiver, and God knows how long. That also means something to me. Kind of need a wide receiver here as well. You've kind of run the course with running backs. I do feel like if you were taking Caleb Johnson there, maybe a little too greedy. If you want to take Johnson, you could always take him here if you prefer him over Judkins. But I think that's a pick right there. I think this is kind of the way that it should go. Now we move on to the Zits. I think the Zits, because they used their first pick on Travis Hunter, Tyler Warren could be in play here. I don't think that the Zits are into Tyler Warren. I don't think they're really into the Colts passing game right now. Maybe that could be a smokescreen, but just looking at it, I mean, you traded Saquon Barkley to get that 4th overall pick. Now we're talking about David Montgomery as your starting running back. We're talking about Josh Jacobs. And then behind that, you got Trey Benson. And then the options are pretty limited after that. I love Caleb Johnson's landing spot. He was my RB5. I had him in that elite tier with these top 5 guys. I think this is a perfect situation for him, right? We've seen what Arthur Smith has been able to do with guys like, Derrick Henry, who of course is one of the best running backs ever, but, big body guys like that. Tyler Algier had a 1,000-yard rookie season with him. Cordell Patterson was a great running back in that Arthur Smith system. So I think that, this is a perfect fit for what they're doing in Pittsburgh. I think he's probably the best player available as it remains on this board. I think you could make the argument for Tyler Warren as well, but if I'm Bowen, I look at it. I need a running back. It's a great running back here. I think there was a teardrop after this, even if you love some situations that these guys ended up in. But I think Caleb Johnson is probably the pick right here. I could see guys like Trey Harris being in play. Who's the kid that we just got? He's always so far down here. Kyle, what's his name? Who was our 3rd round pick? Kyle Williams? The fuck is his name? Hold on. Why am I blanking on his name right now? And why can I? Yeah, Kyle Williams, right? I think that could be in play, but I think it's Caleb Johnson. I think personally I would go Caleb Johnson there. Now we move on to the second round. 2 pins. How far can Tyler Warren fall? Right. They need a tight end bad. I think that they've been really regretting trading away George Kittle. A lot of mess was made about that Travis Kelce trade. Travis Kelce sucks now. He's also on his way out. They need a tight end. They need a building block. I'm not sure that, a guy like Trey Harris, who's wide receiver 2 on his team, or, any of these running backs are really worth it in that spot. I think that Tyler Warren is an easy pick when the board falls like this. Then we move on back to McMorrow. He's got 4 running backs. He's got 3 receivers. I think it's time for another receiver here. To me, this feels like a pretty easy Trey Harris pick. It almost feels like the Chargers are recreating the Keenan Allen, Mike Williams stuff. I think that Trey Harris can be a Mike Williams plus type player. He's a big body receiver, Ole Miss guy. He can play downfield. He can find that success. I think if he can refine the routes a little bit more, I think that he can be really dangerous. But I think this is the type of guy you need to add in the spot in the second round. And also just looking at the board, right? This could be a spot for like a Jackson Dart, but look at this, right? I can already say right now, quarterback is one position I'm definitely not looking here at 2-3. You don't have to worry about that. I don't think Simcoe is too worried about, taking a Jackson Dart here when he's got Josh Allen, he's got Kyler Murray. I don't think Dart really tickles his fancy there. So I think that McMorrow can kind of wait until this pick if he wants to do that. So now we move on to me. I'll be transparent. I mean, just being totally transparent here. It's going to be best player available. Quarterback is not in that conversation for me, both because of need and then also just my personal rankings. But I mean, if I'm looking at it, right, we're talking about, RJ Harvey is suddenly very interesting going to Denver. Cam Scatterbo, he's very interesting going to the Giants. Tootin going to Jacksonville. I forget when he got drafted, but I believe that was day 2 pick there, right there. He's also very interesting. Running back is probably where I'm leaning. I'd say it's like 60-40 between running back and wide receiver. Of course, if a Tyler Warren or Colson Loveland were to fall to me, then I also have to consider that as well. But I mean, I would love to get Trey Harris if he falls to me. Kyle Williams could be interesting there. Jack Besh, I really like that spot in Vegas as well. So right now I'm really picking between like 2 or 3 receivers and 2 or 3 running backs. I'd probably go RJ Harvey right now just because of the opportunity that's presented, in Denver. I'm going to do a little bit more reading on Tootin there just because I like him as a prospect. I thought he was very interesting, especially around the combine time. I think if I just do a little bit more reading, I can sell myself. Just right now, it's a little tough. Looking at the backfield situation in Denver and then comparing it to what's going on in Jacksonville with ETN and Tank Bigsby still there. So if I can kind of get a little more information and then feel better about Tootin maybe being the starting running back early on in that season, then I think that can definitely move him up my big board. But it's going to be best player available. I'm, like I said, 60% leaning running back, but my options are very much open for any position besides quarterback at this point. I don't see that really changing too much in the next 10 days. So moving on to Simcoe's pick, I feel like if Kyle Williams is sitting there, he's going to take him. I think running back is definitely in play for him. For all those guys that I listed, Scatterbo, Tootin, I think that those could definitely be interesting. But I think Kyle Williams there, it's just going to be tough for him to pass up. Wide receiver definitely feels like he could be our future wide receiver 1, and that could happen very soon. Love his traits, love his size, pause. I think it's a really good receiver. I think that could be a really good pick there. So, I think it's one of those 2, take best player available. And then if you feel like you kind of get overcrowded at wide receiver, you can just figure that out later. That's a later problem. Now we're to McMorrow. This is where I think you should take Dart because he's not picking, right? He's not picking again until the 3rd round. Maybe he can use some of these picks. I know he's been trying to offload those. If he can try and trade into the 2nd round here, then I think he could probably make a different pick here and then try and wait again. But as it stands right now, I can't predict that stuff happening. So as it stands right now, I think this is a spot to take Dart. I like this landing spot for Dart. I mean, I'm not huge on Jackson Dart, but if he's going to find success, I feel like this is the perfect spot for him. I mean, right now he doesn't need to start right away. You got Russell Wilson, you got Jameis Winston. Those are guys that you can learn behind. But I mean, he brings some size. He brings some, dual threat play style, right? He can run a good bit. I believe he's the all-time leading rusher for quarterbacks at Ole Miss. I believe that's the stat. I watched John Gruden's QB class. He came across as a little bit of a dummy, right? He had no snap count. He only claps. In college, I think he's going to learn a little bit more about, making adjustments at the line, not being a first read guy. Maybe he is just a moron, but coming in, right? Brian Daboll, he's gotten, he drew up the play that won Alabama the national championship, 2 out of Devontae Smith, right? Nick Saban loves him, thinks he's a genius. Brian Daboll came from, I believe he's a Belichick tree guy. I don't know if he's officially Belichick's tree, but he worked for plenty of seasons in New England. He goes up to Buffalo. He's the guy that gets the credit for helping Josh Allen realize how great he can be. And then he goes down to New York, and they were kind of hoping he could do that with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was not his quarterback. That was not his pick. I think at this point we need to be real with ourselves. I know people are talking about him winning the Indianapolis job, and maybe he does, but that does not mean that he's good. It means that Anthony Richardson is really bad if he's able to beat him out. Daniel Jones sucks. We've seen him make 70 starts in his career. He's fucking awful. The one time that he had a halfway decent season was when he was totally healthy. Otherwise, he's never been that. He's never been totally healthy. So sue Brian Daboll for not being able to fix that bum. Now he has his guy that can play like a Josh Allen. He can run. He's big. He's physical. He can take hits. He can get better at taking hits. Maybe he should learn to slide or step out of bounds. That's something that Josh Allen had to work on himself. Jaden Daniels, that's also something that he had to work on. So if he's going to succeed, I feel like this is the spot where he can do it. I'm still not totally sold, but again, if I'm selling myself on a prospect like Jackson Dart, he landed in a situation that I think can help him realize the full potential that he might have. So, I think it's worth throwing a dart, pun intended, for McMorrow there. Get yourself 2 quarterbacks. You could probably double dip in the third just based on how I have this working out. But take the guy there. Don't risk it. And, maybe coming out of the season, you do have your top 2 quarterbacks in a super flex league. Moving on to Frank. Frank could go wide receiver here. He could go tight end, or he could go running back. Sorry. I think he has some running backs that he does like, but I'm going to go wide receiver here. I'm going to have him taking Jack Besh. Jack Besh, we're talking best player available here to me. Great draft capital, great landing spot. I think that him and Brock Bowers can be a really good tandem for years to come. Besh, he can block. He can be a mismatch nightmare. He can play in the slot. He can play, in the middle of the field, all that stuff. Got a good chip on his shoulder, sad but great story, something that he can work through. I think he's a great player. I know that Frank loves him. I think that he needs some wide receiver help. I feel like this is the pick here. I feel like, to me, if I'm picking for Frank, I think that's pretty easy. And, also I got to consider that I think that Amaral could come and swoop in and take a guy like that. Now we move on to Amaral, who I think does need a little bit of a running back here. He could go Scatabo and try and pair that up. Him and Tyrone Tracy, they do kind of do different things. I think Tyrone Tracy is more of an outside the tackle guy. Scatabo can play more inside. I would still be a little bit worried as a Tyrone Tracy owner, but I don't know if that's enough to get me to take Scatabo in this spot. Still a day 3 running back. We know that can be a little bit risky. But also, you're just doubling up. What if neither of them become fantasy relevant? Then you suck. I feel like you got to kind of diversify a little bit here. Maybe I'm cheating a little bit, but, going based off of Amaral's rookie running back rankings, I'm going to go Rashard Smith here. A bit of a reach. Sorry. But that was like his RB4 or something like that. I'm pretty sure he had him in the top 5. And, he just went to Kansas City. And, I understand he's a 7th round pick. But Pacheco, right? Was he day 3? Was he undrafted? Whatever. I don't think Pacheco looked great. A lot of people are saying Pacheco was a winner because of the draft capital used on Rashard Smith, but also the fact that running back room is still pretty shitty. But I think that's a reason to like Rashard Smith. I mean, he's a good running back. I mean, that's a guy that Amaral likes a lot. And he landed in kind of like the spot of all spots. So if I'm putting myself in Amaral's shoes and taking a running back for him, I'm going to dip into those rookie rankings. I'm going to look at that. And I'm going to go with Rashard Smith there. It's probably a little bold, probably a bit of a reach, but I'm just playing the numbers game here. Moving on, we got Frank. Now I think this is where Frank probably takes Scatabo. I think he loves him. He needs a running back as well. Probably my highest rated running back on the board that's left right now. So I'm going to go with Scatabo. The Cucks. I kind of hate this 3 out of 4 pick run that they have because I have no idea what they're thinking. I think they need a little bit of everything. I'm going to go they need a tight end. I'm going to go Mason Taylor here. Just looking at the tight ends, thinking about the draft capital. I mean, I think Arroyo's definitely in play. I think. But Mason Taylor, I mean, I talk about it, right? When you're looking at for fantasy relevant wide or tight ends, they need to be a top 2 option on their team. It's Garrett Wilson, and then who? Is Allen Lazard even still there? Who's a rookie that they took last year? The kind of the gadget guy, fumbled on the goal line, his first career touchdown. I can't even remember his name right now. I'm blanking. I'm totally blanking on his name. I'm not sure, but I mean, I think that if a guy's gonna step in, I think it's Mason Taylor. I mean, he's got good roots. With Jason Taylor being his dad, Joy Taylor being his aunt. I'm gonna go Mason Taylor tight end for a team that desperately needs one. Then I'm going to take Tootin. Maybe he's falling a little too far here. But I do think that is an interesting pick to make. And like I said, I mean, that's a guy that can definitely be in play for me at 2-3. So that can really things up. Then we go to Amaral. Again, I'm dipping into his own rookie rankings. I'm going to go Jalen Noel. I know that he was taken after Jaden Higgins. Jalen Higgins. They're both in Houston. It's a little weird looking at it from that perspective. But to me, I think Noel slots in a little bit better from a fantasy standpoint. I just feel like Higgins is a little redundant with Nico Collins. I feel like that's more of like a Tank Dell replacement. Noel, to me, feels like more of a Diggs replacement. He can play the slot. He can play on the inside. He can be a little more crafty over the middle. I think that he can complement Nico Collins a little bit more where, Higgins might be a little bit more of a supplement to Collins instead. So, we saw it where Diggs was on a 1,000-yard pace next to Nico Collins, and Tank Dell, he was still having some good games, but when they were all on the field together, he was the one that took the step back, right? He was the Chris Bosh of the big three, the Kevin Love of the big three, all that stuff. So I just feel like it's a little redundant for Higgins, just at least from a fantasy perspective. I like Noel more. I think he could step in, be a day one contributor for them out of the slot and over the middle like that. And then to round out second round, oh my God. I've been eating like shit this weekend. I'm sorry. I got crazy acid reflux going on. I'm going Jalen Royals. I shouted him out earlier when I was talking about the winners and the losers. Yeah, I mean, like I said, he just profiles really similarly to Rashee Rice. We don't know what the deal is with Rashee Rice coming into this season, both with his injury recovery as well as his ongoing legal situation. At some point, you got to think that he's going to be facing a suspension. This is going to be a good opportunity for Jaden for Jalen Royals. Jalen or Jaden? Now I'm all fucked up with these fucking Jalen Royals. Yeah, I don't know. They need a wide receiver. I feel like we're getting a little thin at this point in the draft. I thought that yesterday was a brutal day 3 for anybody holding a third or a fourth round pick. This is maybe not the right draft class to debut the fourth round picks with. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of top end guys now. They need a wide receiver here. I think that's a good play for them. Try and get it out of that Chiefs offense and kind of see where that goes. But that's all I got for the first round, or for the first 2 rounds here. I was kind of teasing that this might be my last mock draft. We'll see. If I feel like I'm mocking again and I feel like I'm making some big changes, I'll probably hop back on and do it again. But I mean, we got 9 days until the draft. I don't think there's too much information that can kind of change this in a vacuum. If I hear something that says absolutely not to one of these picks, and I'd actually go this guy or I'd go this guy, then sure, maybe I'll make the change. But this may or may not be my final mock draft of the rookie draft season. Me, Amaral, and Frank will be back on the channel next week, Monday or Tuesday, before we start the rookie draft to give our post-draft rankings. But as always, we are brought to you by our proud sponsors at Sundog Multimedia, as well as Easy Peasy Moving and Service. Thank you to the chat. Thank you to everybody that tuned in. And we will see you on our next episode.